12th day of the month of Teves, and we, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, are starting the new Mishnah at the top of Pei Daled Amud Aleph. We finished up until the Mishnah talking about Atzamas and Gidon so far, and now the Mishnah is going to discuss what part of the Pesach can be eaten, meaning can you know that you have fulfilled your mitzvah of Korban Pesach through eating a kazayis of it. Not all parts of an animal are edible, or at least strictly speaking, edible. Meaning, when you want to ensure that everybody can eat a piece of your Korban Pesach, so how many pieces do you have? What can be included as a piece of Korban Pesach? Says the Mishnah, 3 lines down from the top of Pei Daled Amud Aleph, Kol hanechal b'shar hagadol, anything that is eaten in a big ox, yachal b'gdi harach, can be eaten with in a small gdi. So, 2 things that we should just point out here in this Mishnah. The first thing is the Mishnah is telling us that animals, as they get older, parts of their bodies, parts of the cartilage hardens. That's the first thing to point out. And the Mishnah is telling us that anything that is eaten in a shara gadol, meaning in a fully grown ox, any part of a fully grown ox that is still edible, meaning didn't harden, and is still edible, that you can eat. That's the part of the animal that you eat with the gedi harach. Those are the things that you could be nimne on. You can have somebody from the chabura say, okay, that's going to be my kazais. We should also point out, that's point number 1. Point number 2 is, obviously, we are not talking about using a shar for your Korban Pesach. That would be awesome. A Korban Pesach can only come from gdim, from a set or gdi, from sheep and goats. A shar is not part of that. That's bovan. So what the Mishnah is telling us is, and the Samiri explains, is that the shar has the most things that become hardened. Right, a fully grown shar has the most things that get hardened. That would be the paradigm of something that is inedible. But anything that is edible in an ox is certainly edible in a gdi, and therefore in a baby gdi from 8 days old. So at that point in time, you are good to go. And then the Mishnah says something interesting. The Gemara is going to discuss this. V'roshe kanafayim. This machlok is exactly what this is, but we'll go according to Shidduch Rashi. The roshe kanafayim means the top of the shoulder blades. Those are the heads of the wings. The shoulder blades, which seem to be somewhere between bone and cartilage, the schusim, and the schusim, which is generally cartilage parts of the animal. And the question is, what is this and the shoulder blades and cartilage? You can eat, you can't eat. It's a big ox, it's a small goat. What exactly is this? The Mishnah doesn't really define it yet. And we are going to talk about that in the Gemara. Says the Gemara as follows: Rabba asked the following kasha. I mean, he has an internal contradiction. Tanan, we said, Kol hanechal b'shar hagadol, anything that's eaten in a big ox, yachal b'gdi harach, can be eaten in a small goat. V'she'ena nechal, and that which cannot be eaten, loy, you cannot eat. Meaning that's the implication. Anything that can be eaten, you can eat, and anything that can't be eaten, you cannot eat. But the end of the Mishnah then says, Rosh Kanafayim, the shoulder blades, the tops of the shoulder blades, and the cartilage, what about it? You sure cannot eat that with regards to a big ox. So what are we talking about here? Ella Tanahi says Rabbah, it has to be that our Mishnah is quoting a Machlekes Tanaim. And this is what the Mishnah says. Anything that's eaten in a big ox is eaten in a small goat. And that which is not eaten, no. And you must say that somebody else in the Mishnah is saying that you can also eat the Rosh Hashanah and the schusim, meaning that has a different status. That's a different kind of thing, that even though it's not able to be eaten in the Shar HaGadol, it can be eaten in the Gdi Arach, and it must be that there's 2 opinions here. Rava says no. Ma hein kitani. The second clause of the Mishnah, the second piece of the Mishnah, is giving examples for the beginning of the Mishnah. Meaning, it is an explanation of the beginning of the Mishnah. It's not a machlokes. And this is how you read the Mishnah. Anything that is eaten in a big ox, when you boil it, meaning when you cook it for a long time, you put it in a crock pot, you've had it cooking for hours and hours and hours. That could be eaten could be eaten in a small goat that is roasted, meaning roasting something doesn't soften the bones. So anything that once you've cooked it out with a big ox, anything that's now soft enough to be eaten, obviously bones you cannot eat, but some like piece of cartilage would be edible at that point in time if you cooked it down long enough. So the fibers, the sinews, whatever it's gonna melt down, it's gonna soften. It would be edible. Umahin, and what are these kinds of things that in general you couldn't really eat, but if you cooked it for a long time in a shara gadol you would be able to eat, and therefore in a soft young goat would be mutter, meaning, and you could say that's going to be your kazayis. So that is things like the rosh knafayim v'aschusim. We're talking about the tops of the shoulder blades and cartilage. And then says the Gemara Tanya Kavasa Rava. Rava has the supporting brisa. Anything that could be eaten in a big ox, if it is boiled out, could be eaten in a small goat that is roasted. What are these kinds of things? You're talking about the rosh knafayim, the tops of the shoulder blades, the and the cartilage, vigidin harachim, and soft sinews. Those are all treated like meat. All of that is treated like meat, even though in a big ox you wouldn't be able to eat this. In a small goat, you would. Itmar, and we have the following statement. What about sinews that are going to get hardened? Meaning, even in a human being, if a baby is born, the moment the baby is born, the head is very soft. It's going to harden later. Right, the skull is going to fuse; it's going to harden later. That happens later on. You have gidin, you have sinews, that are going to get soft, that are going to get harder. Rabbi Yochanan says, Pesach. You can count those in. Count that's part of the menu in Pesach. The gidin that are going to get hard later, but they're still soft now. Rabbi Yochanan says you're good to go. Excellent, no problem. You can count them in. Rish Lakish Amar ein nimnin Pesach. Rish Lakish says no. You cannot. You cannot count that in the menu. Yeah. Now we haven't discussed whether or not you have to eat them. You don't have to eat them. Whether it's nice or not nice. Meaning, it seems to be that it's not basar. You cannot eat it. So the charid might have the din of nicer, because if it's inedible, then there's no issue of leaving it over, like the bones. You don't have them in the menu for Pesach. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan says, you count them. Why? Basar hashtazlin. We care about now. Right now, it's edible. I mean, if it would be 2 years' time, you wouldn't be edible, but right now it is. Rish Lakish says, we don't count them now because we know what they are going to become. And they're going to become hard. If this animal would grow up more, it would be hard. Now we have a kasha. Rish Lakish challenges Rabbi Yochanan from our Mishnah. Anything that's eaten in a shara gadol can be eaten in a gederach. Mahin, what are they? This seems to be clearly Rabbi's opinion, not Rabbi's opinion. We're talking about the tops of the shoulder blades and the cartilage. Hani in these ones, these ones you can eat. Aval gidin shesevin akshas loy. But the gidin that are going to harden later on, that you cannot eat. That's not part of the list. Amalai says to him, Tani Hani. No, he teaches these things, and it means those things as well. It's not an exhaustive list. It's just an example. But there's other stuff as well that is mutter that you can certainly eat. Hani my timer the loy misachal b'shara gadol. Hani my timer. What's the reason that these are mutter, meaning the rosh knafayim and the schusim? Because if you boiled the shara hagadol, you boiled a big ox. So those things would soften to the point that it would be edible. Also these things, if you boiled it down, it would also be edible. Amar le Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Abin, says Rabbi Yirmiyah to Rabbi Abin. Ki aslos come to Rabbi Abau. Do me a favor, when you go in front of Rabbi Abau, Ramile, ask him the following question. Mi Amar Rabbi Yochanan gidin shesevin akshas nimn alem b'Pesach. Did Rabbi Abau, did Rabbi Yochanan really say that the gidin, that the sinews that are going to get hard later, you can still count them in for the menu now? Alma, this implies that we care about what's now. Problem. But in Maseches Chulin, Reish Lakish asked a kasha from Rabbi Yochanan with regards to the Mishnah on what's a kufchav base. Or harosh shel egel harach. What about the skin on the head of the of a young goat? Maushi itame. Can that become tame? Meaning, right now it is edible. Later, the bones are going to fuse, and it is no longer going to be edible. It's not going to be food. If after you shechted your goat, if that becomes tame, does that have a status of food or non-food? Meaning, bones of an animal don't become tame. It's not food. It's not a problem. It's not flesh. Right now, this is flesh, but if the animal would grow up, it wouldn't be. Ve'amarlo, and the end of that conversation was, he says, Ein metame. It does not become tame. It does not become tame. So if it doesn't become tame, what does that mean? If ein metame, it means that it says the Gemara Alma that implies that we go in accordance with the end, that we care about what happens at the end. And here, our whole discussion, Rabbi Yochanan is the guy that's saying, right now they're soft, so they're soft. No problem. So that was the question that Rabbi Yirmiyah tells Rabbi Abin, the guy is Rabbi Abau. Amarle, so he said to him, Rabbi Abau said to Rabbi Abin, Ha loy chash lekimche. Ha, meaning this one, Rabbi Yirmiyah, who made this, who sent you this question, Ha loy chash lekimche. He didn't grind his grain, meaning he didn't grind his flour properly. He mixed in stuff that was not supposed to be part of this. Rashi says, why is he grinding grain with shafia? Meaning he doesn't have the sugya clear. Because if you finish reading that Gemara, if you remember the conversation, I mean, they didn't have the Gemara, they are the Gemara, right? If you remember that conversation, you will know that Rabbi Yochanan eventually agreed to Reish Lakish in that case. And he said to him, Al takniteni, don't bother me about this, don't aggravate me about this. Because I now teach that Mishnah as a lashon yachid, meaning as a das yachid, it's a singular opinion. What's the backstory here? Is that originally Rabbi Yochanan had taught that sugya where it says, where the Mishnah there says that it's not that it is metame. So I originally taught that, says Rabbi Yochanan, I taught that as the Stam Mishnah. And we pass on to the Stam Mishnah that we care about the now, we don't care about the later. And it would be tummy. Then later on, I figured out that that's not the case, that this was a Das Yachid, it's not the majority opinion, and therefore I hold that we hold not of the now, but we hold of what it's going to be, and therefore that's my conclusion there, and it's also the conclusion of Rabbi Yochanan in our sugya as well. And therefore, the whole question is off the table because Rabbi Yochanan holds in both cases, both in Chulin and in Pesachim, that we care about what the bones are going to become, that part of the animal is going to become. We don't care about what it is. Now, Rabbi Yochanan retracted completely. Okay, says the Mishnah as follows. Mas Nisin, we're 2/3 ish, yeah, about 2/3 down from the top of the page. Says the Mishnah as follows: Ha shever es ha etzem pesach tahar. If somebody broke a bone of a korban pesach that was tahar, harei zeh lo karbon, you get smacked, right? You get lashes for that. You 40 lashes, which means 39 lashes, obviously. Aval hamoit b'tahar, but somebody that left behind that violated noisa with a tahar korban pesach, v'ashever b'tameh. And if you broke a bone of a tameh, and we saw that this was a machlokes before, you don't get malchus for that because the shever b'tameh, that would be a din d'rabbanan. But a moiseh b'tahar, that's interesting. That is a din d'oraisa. We know that that's a din d'oraisa. We're going to have to analyze and figure out what that is about. Says the Gemara, I know that you should get malchus for. I know that you should get malchus for. I know Moshe B'Tahar. I know the din of Moshe B'Tahar. Ditanya, because we have a brayso because the brayso quoting the pasuk says don't leave anything of it until morning. That which is left over until morning, the has to be fine. Okay. And the Torah is coming along to tell you that there is an essay, that there's a positive mitzvah that follows after the loisase, that follows after the negative mitzvah. Loimar, to teach you she'ein loike, that you don't get malchus for violating the isur of noisar. Div Rabbi Yehuda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Meaning, the pasuk is telling you that that you have to burn it in the morning to tell you that you don't get malchus. What you do is you burn it. Rabbi Yaakov says, said that's not the reason that you don't get malchus. Ella mishum, this is Maseches for those that have seen the third parak of Maseches. Why don't you get malchus? Yeah, Ella mishum dahavele lav she'en b'maisa, because how do you violate noisar? By not doing anything. All that you do is nothing. You just leave it until the morning. Ve'ein loiken alav, and therefore you don't get malchus for it, because you haven't done an action, and that is what is called a lav she'en b'maisa. It is a prohibition that doesn't have any activity connected to it. You didn't do anything, and therefore you cannot get malchus for it. Aval shevet b'tamei minalan. How do you know this din of a shevet b'tamei, that you don't get malchus for breaking the bone of a pesach, which is tamei? The pasuk says, this is what we had seen before. You're not allowed to break a bone in it. Boy, in it means bekasher, in a fitting animal, an animal that you could use, and not in an animal that's puzzle. And then we had seen before that it's a question of whether or not it had a shas kosher at all, meaning maybe that's part of the conversation. Did it at any point in time have a shas kosher? And maybe if it never had a shas kosher, then there was never an issue. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, the Brisa says, don't break any bones in it. That's the din, as we have just described and discussed. Rabbi says, I'll give you another rationale here. The pasuk says, in one house you must eat it, and don't break any bones in it. What does that mean? Anything that is fitting to be eaten, yesh by mishum shirasatzim, that has the isur of shirasatzim of breaking a bone. If it doesn't have any, if it's not fitting to be consumed, meaning it became tamei, became possible, ain by mishum shirasatzim, there is no prohibition of breaking a bone. Maybe now, what is the nafkamina between whether or not you learn from a Bais Echad Yachel or from the word boy? Maybe now, what's the nafkamina? What is the practical difference between them? Rabbi Yirmiyah as follows: Pesach haba b'tumah ikime now. I'll tell you exactly what the difference is. A Pesach haba b'tumah. What happens if everybody's bringing the Korban Pesach in a state of tumah? Lemanda amar kasher, according to the one that says that it's kosher, turning over the page to Pei Dalam base. Hi, puzzle. This is puzzle, meaning it is fundamentally puzzle. And boy in a tummy, so meaning only in a kosher, but not in a tummy, not in a puzzle. But now this is fundamentally tummy and puzzle, and therefore maybe there shouldn't be an isur of shirasatzim. The man da'amar ro'el achila, but it is still ro'el achila. You can still eat it because tumah b'tzibur or tumah b'tzibur. Hi nami ro'el achila. It is still fit to be eaten. But Hashem Yisbarach will continue with Rav Yosef on this very chunky Amud for tomorrow. So get ready for that Erev Shabbos Kodesh, and looking forward to Hashem Yisbarach to seeing everybody there. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.